now. Merci beaucoup. Bienvenue, everybody. Thank you for coming to this Zoom meeting about our dog bylaw. It's been a long time in coming, and I believe that if we had it in person, I'm not sure we would have had 36 people. And we will be posting this on YouTube, and we'll post it on the social media channels of Côte Saint-Luc and the Dog Owners Committee. So there'll be hundreds of people that will watch this. We're also going to build up the database of everyone who has a dog owner's license, and they will be able to watch this too. But this is going to be a very interesting meeting. But before we begin, I would like the mayor to say a few words. He gave me the portfolio of animal protection. Actually, Anthony Housefather did, and the mayor's continued to give it to me, and we take it very seriously. So, Mr. Mayor, any words you'd like to share with the dog owners?
Yeah, well, thank you, Mike. Thank you. I know you take it very seriously. You take all your portfolios seriously, and you're very proactive, ensuring that everybody knows what's going on. This is a great initiative, having this done on Zoom. You have a lot of people that are going to be able to get an update, and I'm sure you'll follow up with an email to inform everybody of exactly what happened tonight. Unfortunately, I was planning to stay longer, but I'm off on my way to the vigil for the 6 hostages that were killed, and it's starting like also right now. So I'm not going to be able to stay on, but I just wanted to send greetings and thank you for everything you do, Mike. Keep it up. Merci, Councillor Cohn. Il travaille très fort pour la ville et dans tous ces dossiers, certainement avec les chiens. So thank you for this as well, for cats, dogs, and all animal protection.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your support on these important issues, and good luck tonight at the vigil.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Comme j'ai dit, les personnes ici ce soir pourraient demander les questions en anglais, en français. The presentation will be from Mr. Jean-Marc Dubois, our manager of operations for public safety, who is a dog owner himself and who has been very, very helpful to us and to dog owners and to people who have had issues with dogs that are considered dangerous dogs. He takes it very seriously. Working on a bylaw is not easy. Making changes to a bylaw is not easy. It takes a lot of time, and he's got a lot of other dossiers. We do have a dog owners committee. Anna Katz and Jonathan Goldman are the co-chairs. I don't see them with us tonight, but Tamar Hertz is with us, and Tamar has played a very important role. She's not a dog owner, and she's provided a very interesting perspective to the committee of people who are not dog owners and have certain concerns. And it's I think it's a model for other communities to follow, not just to consult with people who own dogs, but people who don't have dogs and what their perspective is. So when we get to the presentation and we open up for questions, Tamar, I know you have some things to say, and we'll put you on for sure, and you can make your comments. Anyone will be able to make the comments. We'll ask you to use the raise hand thing on your sign on your Zoom screen if you want to ask a question. So what we're going to do right now is Jean-Marc Dubois is going to make a presentation, an information session this is, on what some of the aspects of the new dog bylaw are going to be that you need to know about. And if you have questions, mark them down and wait, please, until we start the question period. It's questions, it's ideas, so on and so forth. And Dr. Marlene Kalin from the Côte Saint-Luc Hospital for Animals may join us during the call. If she does, I'll put her on for a few minutes as well. So without further ado, merci beaucoup, Jean-Marc Dubois.
Bonsoir tout le monde. Good evening, everyone. As Mike said, I'll be reviewing some of the proposed changes that will be presented to Council later this year to hopefully take effect by the end of this year. If at any point during this conversation you would like me to clarify in French, feel free. N'hésitez pas si vous avez des questions durant la présentation. Gênez-vous pas à lever votre main. Posé dans la langue de votre choix, je vais faire mon possible pour y répondre. Mais comme je vois que la majorité des gens ici sont anglophones, on va débuter en anglais, mais à tout moment, je suis prêt à vous laisser les coordonnées pour me joindre si vous avez des questions, même après la rencontre. Pour débuter, je voulais juste vous donner un peu de contexte. 2019-2020, le gouvernement provincial a émis une nouvelle loi. So back in 2019, 2020, provincial government created a new provincial law. Côte Saint-Luc and like many municipalities mirror. So we can be as strict, but we cannot be less strict. We can be more strict, but we have to minimally meet the requirements of the provincial law. What's interesting is that certain cities, i.e. the city of Montreal, the Aglo, actually, instead of mirroring that bylaw, actually decided to complement it. So none of their articles are the same because their agents are able to apply the provincial law, and on top of that, to suit their requirements and their needs, have created a different bylaw. Since our last meeting about 18 months ago, where we met with the dog committee, an additional law came into effect in regards to animals and had to do with the well-being of animals. As we'll discuss, that was the basis of our conversation about 18 months ago, was really adding some amendments, some articles to our bylaw to make sure that dogs are not being mistreated, being cared for by their guardians, and making sure that we give ourselves the proper tools to enforce the bylaw. When developing these new articles, we started working with that provincial law and started seeing where some of the shortcomings were, both from the provincial side to also our neighboring city. We have to concede to the fact that we are neighboring Montreal. So a lot of their articles kind of reflect or need to be reflected in Côte Saint-Luc. Keep in mind, Police Station 9, which deserves the city of Côte Saint-Luc, also deserve NDG, Hampstead, Mo West. And every time that they step into a different city, or in Montreal, a different set of rules apply. So this was also taken into consideration. So what I'm going to do today is spare you the legal jargon of a bylaw. So I'll just basically go over the main titles and just maybe expand shortly on what that means. Firstly, a bylaw is usually started with definitions. These definitions are used mostly in a court of law to help decide exactly the wording. So in these, the present bylaw already has definitions, but we've redefined, and I'm going to start out with a hot subject here, the topic of service dogs, and also touching upon the subject of emotional support dogs. Service dogs, by what the provincial law means, is these are dogs meant for, and I actually have the complete article here, but is basically meant for people visually impaired. I'll try to spare you the lecture, but paraphrasing here, aide thérapeutique à une personne, un handicap, une déficience au sens. So based on the definition from the Commission des droits de la personne et des droits de la jeunesse au Québec, basically defined to as a dog that helps non-seeing, autistic, epileptic, deaf, and making sure that these dogs have the proper certification. So you can't exactly go to these fly-by-night organizations and get your dog registered. What that actually has been one of the main issues, because the concept of service dogs is because service dogs are presently excluded. So they're the exception. So when we say, for example, a dog has to be on a leash, or the dog is on a property and is, doesn't have the proper leash, police, public security departments cannot enforce. The dog is basically excluded from this bylaw. So that's why we needed to not broaden, but actually narrow the gap of what we are permitting dogs to be excluded. So as such, because of lack of regulation, because when the provincial government, when they proposed and when they put forward this provincial law, didn't necessarily do their due diligence. So even the Mira dogs, and so they were not advised necessarily that they would be named in this bylaw as one of the proper entities to issue these certificates. So there's still very much a gray area. And again, today I was on the phone with the city of Montreal to really make an effort in seeing that the bylaw hasn't changed in that definition. So we're redefining the definition of service dogs because of the lack of regulation, and we're defining that emotional support dogs are not excluded from the bylaw. So meaning that it's okay to have an emotional support dog, but you still have to get a dog license. You still have to walk the dog with the proper leash. You still have to respect, for example, in the case of, and I'll take Canada Day as an example, Canada Day festivities that were just held in Trudeau last summer. Well, in these types of events, the bylaw does state that dogs are not permitted inside the vicinity. You've got hundreds of people walking around. Is enough, I know, as a dog owner to maybe spook some dogs, and sometimes their behavior may differ just because of the sheer presence of other dogs or just crowds. So we are excluding the emotional support dogs from the exclusion. We're adding as well in the definitions the concept of what is an abandoned dog, and we'll go over this later. Adding the concept of a hybrid dog. This was actually advertised. So just to reassure people, the city of Montreal does, back when Mayor Coderre was in office, he had outlawed outright pit bulls, which is something that Mayor Valérie Plante overturned when she took office. However, there is this mixed breed of dog and wolf that is not permitted. So you cannot crossbreed a dog with a wolf, understandably so. We're going into almost coyote-like territory at this point, and this is not necessarily where we want to go. So keeping in mind that hybrid dogs will be defined in the bylaw. We're adding the concept of a dog at risk. Again, today, unfortunately, dog biting incident came on my desk. The first thing that I do is contact the owner of the attacking dog to specify that his dog is now at risk and must respect a temporary muzzle order for the duration of the investigation. So we're defining what is a dog at risk, and we already have the definition of potentially dangerous and dangerous dogs. And finally, another definition is the concept of dog walkers. So this is a somewhat new concept that we're seeing more and more of in Côte Saint-Luc and in other cities as well. So we'll define that at a later time. That's pretty much for the definitions. In terms of applications, we found it important to have an article that better defines the powers of the public security agents, i.e., when, for example, and keep in mind, we're not going, the route of, military police or Gestapo or anything like that, but we have to better define the powers of inspection, seizure of an animal. If, for example, the city decides after numerous fines and warnings that a dog owner is not fit to keep their dogs, for example, that the city has the capabilities to seize the animal in the proper way, as it's done by the law, to seize the animal and turn the animal over to our dedicated animal control service, because the city of Côte Saint-Luc does not do business with SPCA anymore. We've also defined additional owner's obligations. This is a big one. I know that this is something that people were kind of curious about. Presently, the bylaw states that you cannot have more than 4 dogs per dwelling. So per address, 4 dogs. But how many dogs can you walk at once on the street? So we'll be defining that as 2 dogs per guardian while on public domain. And we're not changing. It still remains 4 dogs to per dwelling. Anybody that wants to walk 3 or more dogs, then we will refer to a dog walker's permit. So in the city, we're actually now seeing dedicated companies or entities advertising the walking of dogs, and a company will walk your dog happily for a few dollars, under certain conditions, bring him in certain areas, but they will bring your dog with 4, 5, 6, 7 dogs. So at some point, it becomes who's walking who. So one big aspect that you'll notice in this bylaw is the concept of keeping everyone safe. I don't want this many dog animal incidents or biting incidences cross my desk, and there are far too many still coming to this day. So anybody wishing to walk 2 or more dogs per person. So if husband and wife, you've got 3 dogs, you just need another person capable of holding the leash to go out with you. I have 3 dogs at home. That means 2 walks if I'm by myself. So I'll walk 2 once, and then my dog gets this preferential treatment and gets a walk by herself. The same concept. Obviously, dog owners having this permit, public security will keep themselves the right to ask for the certificate or the permit of the dog walker permit. So you must walk your dog, making sure that you may be called to present your dog walker permit, because I'm pretty sure, and if all the cameras were on, show of hands, who walks their dog and has their all of their ID and their wallets on them? I know I don't. Chances are pajama bottoms late at night. Let's call it what it is. It is what it is. But dog walkers doing this as a business, or people simply just walking. I'd rather see 5 people walking a dog than 1 person walking 5 dogs. But whoever does that will just need to have their permits with them. So far, did I lose anyone? Am I okay? Is the pace okay? Any
Very good.
questions or
Very
anything that
good.
you'd like me to clarify in French, maybe?
Yeah. Si quelqu'un voudrait que Jean-Marc répète quelque chose en français, levez la main ou juste dit quelque chose, vous pourrez dire quelque chose. But I think everything is good, Jean-Marc, and continue. So far, excellent presentation. Continue.
Bylaws also define owner's obligations. The amendments proposed mention no more than 2 dogs per guardian while on public domain, which we've called, and then dog well-being. So redefining the fact that opening a vehicle's window. So when I said earlier that between the provincial law and today, there was another law that was presented all about the well-being of animals. Doesn't necessarily apply every article to what we do. It had a lot to do with farm animals, had a lot to do with, I'll give a perfect example, City of Montreal, calèche rides and the handling of horses, using animals and dogs specifically in businesses. So that was, it had an interesting article which I took, which basically said that you must keep your dog cool. As an owner, you have that responsibility. Therefore, leaving your dog in your car, and just having the window crack open is not sufficient enough to retreat from the heat. And so I actually took that article that says, so redefining the fact that opening the vehicle's window is not considered an effective way to escape the heat. Another one was defining the use of choke collars, spite collars, electric collars, and other collars likely to cause pain to the animal. This is what we had discussed 18 months ago with the new provincial law that actually helps us enforce this, so that we would have this also in our own bylaw. I've come across one file where a lady was telling me she was not necessarily fit not in good health necessarily, and walking an 80-pound dog, and had advised us that she had to walk the dog with an electric collar set to maximum. No more. This is like, you're not fit to have a dog if that's what you need, or get yourself a dog walker, but you're causing harm to your dog, and we don't want that at all in our city. So I think it was important to make a stance there. And furthermore, defining dog abandonment. July 1st is a reality also in Côte Saint-Luc. Tenants sometimes come and go, and unfortunately, this past year, a dog was actually found, not microchipped, not tagged. There was no way for the city to even know where the dog came from. And literally, the tenants that had the dog were nowhere to be found. This new bylaw would give us the powers to work with law enforcement and, through the power of inspection, make inquiries to locate the owners. What we're defining by abandonment of a dog is that we don't just leave the dog there. So we're defining, saying that you must leave your dog either at a shelter or at a vet, but it is illegal to leave the dog behind and let him go. But again, proposed changes. We also glanced upon, in light of the provincial regulation, the commercial exploitation of dogs. So adding that someone wishing to run a business of reproducing dogs just as a business will be illegal in Côte, or actually will be legal without the council's approval. So we'll have to define a process where we don't have to note. I don't know of any in Côte Saint-Luc. I do have information about an incident from several years ago, but currently I do not know of any dog breeders or anybody doing this kind of business in Côte Saint-Luc. But should we come across these, then we could set some parameters, because this is all for the well-being of the animals as well. The major part of the bylaw modifications has to do with two things: nuisance and dog runs. And I'm coming up to the nuisance one. Adding the concept of nuisance emanating from smell, odors, and not letting dogs damage private property. We don't have this. It basically doesn't define it. So a dog, for example, could not go through your garbage. A dog could not tip over your garbage bin. Again, more of a thing in Montreal, not so much so in Côte Saint-Luc, at least in the 5 years that I've been on at my job. Also in nuisance, adding the infraction of biting, attempting to bite, or attacking a person or another animal. So at present, neither the provincial law or the city bylaw, which reflects it, have anything. So in the case of a biting incident, or a case that someone gets, I would not trampled, but pushed out of the way. Usually people get injured because they are placing themselves or placing their body in the way to protect their smaller animal from maybe a larger one. And they will sometimes get bumped or fall to the ground and injure themselves. So that, to me, still constitutes an infraction, which is something that we do not have right now. So in the case of a biting incident, we're issuing tickets for not having a leash, not having a proper tag, but not so much for the actual biting incident. And again, there are parameters that the law forces us to have. If we do not witness this, we need to get a witness on record to be able to say, I, Jean-Marc Dubois, saw at 8 p.m. Mr. Mike Cohen residing at this address. Their dog actually bit my dog. And so, there is a process in play to get the facts so that we can enforce an actual fine for a biting incident.
Does that have to be with the police? Does that have to go to the police station for that?
If we, with the power of identification, that justifies us the powers to inspect. Ideally, the reason why we want the police there is because it is a penal infraction. So if, for example, you wish to go to court and get or sue for damages to say vet bills, for example, in light of this, you will need the police and their report number to do so. The role of public security in a situation like this, in the case of a dog biting incident, is deeming whether the dog is dangerous or not. So two different things, two different factors as to why we want the police to be there, mostly to identify the parties themselves and to get this on file so that if ever there's lawyers brought into the mix, our reports alone are not meant to be sent in as the sole resource for defining a judgment in terms of penal nature. So that's why you will oftentimes see police on site, but they're mostly there to get the stories and identify the proper individuals. Adding the infraction of dog rummaging through household waste, moving it, tearing the bags, overturned containers. Adding the infraction of walking a dog on a leash while the guardian is on a bicycle, skateboard, scooter, or velocipede, which is basically anything that has wheels and a motor. I've seen this happen, and more often than you would think. I know that most dogs will listen to their master, to their guardians, and never had a problem. People that are well into fitness and they jog don't have a problem. The problem is oftentimes I see kids, teenagers, or preteens go walk the dog, take the bike, and they're holding the leash in one hand and holding the bike in the other and trying to make their way in the street on public domain or sometimes even on bike paths. They're not in control of the actual dog, are not in control of the leash. And as the bylaw originally states, you must be in control of the leash at all times. So this is actually something that is going to be enforced, and I'm hoping, and I've seen infractions in our own city for this. Also modifying to restrict that dogs never be left unattended, tied to furniture. There is a precedent for this. In the city of Montreal, there was a dog biting incident where the dog was tied on the guardrail of a commercial establishment. So say, for example, I'm sorry, for those Côte Saint-Luc residents, I'll take an example off Montreal, off Mo West. Westminster, all the businesses, all the Burger de Villes and the restaurants that are there. Typical, guardrails in the frontage of the homes. Dog is tied to the guardrail and actually bites someone. This was taken to court, and it was deemed that the dog owner, although were inside the establishment for less than 10 minutes, was not deemed in control of the leash, and as such was found guilty. So we want to, again, learn from precedents and learn from other cities and other bylaws, and are deeming that we would prefer to modify to make sure that no dog is left unattended, tied to furniture, park bench, your own private guardrail. The dogs must be tended to. Dogs must be, you have to keep an eye on your dog. I actually had this conversation with one of my agents saying, oh, I leave my dog in the yard. I do too, but I go in the yard. Or I'm looking over the dog to make sure that A, doesn't get away, B, if he poops, I pick up because I tend to walk barefoot in my grass. So, but at the same time, he goes, oh, I go inside the house. You're responsible for that dog. And if anybody says, otherwise, if an incident can so easily occur, if someone opens the gate My landlord opens the gate. The neighbor, it's semi-detached. The next door neighbor opens the gate. My dog's off. And those are hefty fines, I tell you. These are not fines defined by the city necessarily. Provincial fines, and you all here probably know or do not know, the fine for an extendable leash. We've all seen it. We probably even have one. Those leashes that go from 6 feet to 12 feet or 18 feet, those are illegal. Leashes must be no longer than 1.85 meters or 6 feet. So if you're holding that retractable leash and your dog is 12 feet away, you're not in control of your dog. That fine itself is actually $500 plus the fees. So and this is not Côte Saint-Luc defined. This is the province that defined this. We can be stricter. We cannot be less strict or lenient in that sense. That was nuisance. The rest really is parks and dog runs, redefining the parks where dogs are not permitted. Prior to this revamping of what we know now as 2555, which is the current Côte Saint-Luc bylaw in regards to dogs, the previous bylaw stated that certain parks, because of their size, dogs were not permitted there. It didn't carry over to the new bylaw, so we need to reinsert this. Mitchell Brownstein Park, for example. Glen National Park is one that comes to mind. Really small parks. The rule of thumb is dogs are not permitted within 30 feet of a playground. So splash pads, playgrounds, dogs are not permitted. Even if you bring your dog on a leash, don't get within 30 feet of that area. But some parks, Aumont Park that we share with Montreal, that's in District 1, McDonald Avenue near Côte Saint-Luc Road, or just below Queen Mary. That park is shared. That park is just so narrow. You cannot have dogs clear that 30 feet. Another one that comes to mind is McDowell Park is another one. Splash pads, playgrounds, and you don't have 30 feet of clearance. Most of the signage was never removed. So you may have signs on the side of the fences of those parks that actually say that dogs are not permitted, but you'll have a generic general rules of the park that will say we'll do. So we'll just need to redefine the parks where it was they don't meet the criterias of the law and restrict dogs in those areas. We already mentioned dog owners walking two dogs on public domain. Same carries over to dog runs. Dog owners cannot bring more than 2 dogs at a time in the dog run. If you bring another person capable of controlling the animal, then you have 4. So again, my example, we have 3 dogs at home. If I'm by myself, I can only bring 2 dogs at a time in the dog run. If my wife comes with me, we can bring all 3 dogs, and now we can control the dogs. We can intervene if there's an incident there as well. Feeding a dog in the dog run will not be permitted. Bringing any food, you, the dog owners, the guardians, don't bring food. Dogs go, I don't know about you, even though my dog is well behaved, if I'm having dinner, the dog's right next to me with their pouty eyes, like, Dad, I could do without the kibbles. Give me that steak that you have on your plate. So same thing. No food for dogs, no food for the guardians. Beverages are fine.
You don't find that a bit extreme there, like for the feeding of the dogs? I agree, no food should be in the run, but sometimes you need a few cookies to, like when you're
Jonathan,
in a
do me a
training
favor.
period.
Jonathan, do me a favor. We're gonna have Jean-Marc wrap up shortly, and then I'm gonna have you speak first as the co-chair of the Dogs Committee. Okay, so you can just everyone just hold on.
All right, sorry to interrupt then.
No, it's okay. And welcome Jonathan Goldman, who is the co-chair of our Dog Owners Committee. So Jean-Marc, maybe you could mention a few salient points right now. Then we can open up for questions, and then you can maybe touch upon some other issues that maybe haven't been touched upon. But mainly, I think the thing that people mainly want to know about, and they've asked about is how are we going to deal with dangerous dogs? What does somebody do who's walking on the street and they get bitten? We just had an incident. It's been on social media that happened the other day. They're not a dog owner. They get bitten or their dog gets attacked. What have our fines been, and are we making any changes to that in our new bylaw? That's what I'd like to. Go ahead.
Absolutely. I was actually just done. I had one last point, which is dog runs not bringing any sort of uh, ball, stick, other objects to exercise a dog when another keeper's dog is also present. Again, same as food, source of conflict. Even two of my 3 dogs, if one's eating, we have to step in. So the concept of dangerous dogs is the only changes that we're seeing for this the proposed changes for this bylaw have to do with identifying a dog that is either, as you recall, at risk, potentially dangerous, or dangerous. It's on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 being not dangerous at all, and 10, you don't want to cross Cujo at number 10. And following that, obviously, different color tags for any dogs that are deemed either at risk, potentially, well, they don't remain at risk. A dog is at risk during an investigation, but it is recorded as such and then amended if the dog is deemed either not at risk, potentially dangerous, and dangerous. But we've gone to, we'll be going to different color tags for dogs deemed potentially dangerous and dangerous. In the case of these types of dogs, conditions are imposed by the city. So it's not a Jean-Marc Dubois decision, and the new bylaw actually is these decisions will be made by committee, which includes people with more bananas than me and people in legal affairs as well. Because as much as I love the city and I enjoy working for the city, I don't want to be the one having to say, I'm putting your dog down or I'm seizing your dog, and that will be based on a committee decision. So to directly ask or to answer your question as to, well, what do we do if we see a dog attack? Well, you need to call 911. Police is always the first people to call because even if public security do not show, we get the file, because keep in mind, the power of identification right now stems from the police. And they enforce the provincial law, and they also enforce the Côte Saint-Luc law. But oftentimes they will get the proper ID and get us the facts of the incident, for which at this point, my first point of contact then is to contact the attacking dog's guardian to say that an investigation has been opened. These documents are both served by bailiff, and we do place that call. We run our investigation. In certain cases, we will ask for a dog behaviorist to analyze the dangerousness of a dog. As I spoke before, that scale of 0 to 10, 0 being Snoopy and 10 being Cujo. Well, where does this animal fit in the grand scheme of things? So the proof of the type of injuries that were caused, prior incidences, how obedient is the dog? Like it takes about 45 minutes to 50 minutes, done by 2 vets in an enclosed area provided by the city for the exam to take place, where they will both meet with the dog, but also meet with the guardian as well. And they go through a series of tests and exercises. A report is then submitted back to the city of Côte Saint-Luc, for we as a committee now can say, okay, this dog was deemed 5 out of 10, falls in the potentially dangerous category. Therefore, we will impose a permanent muzzle order. We will impose conditions, for example, that the dog must own or cannot be walked by a certain individual, or no kids shall approach, you know, there's a series, and I'm sorry, I don't have the usual list of, you know, possible conditions, but if the city deems that we need to put a 20-foot fence in your yard to keep the dog in your yard, the city has the power to ask for this and a time for this to be done. Otherwise, the dog could be seized. So, or fines being issued. The goal is not to throw fines. The goal is not to, we're not balancing out the city's budget with fines here. And keep in mind, public security's role is really to make sure that we reduce the nuisance and address the issues to make the city safe. We, you know, along with police, that is our main goal. So the goal is not to start issuing tickets because you're walking your dog with an extendable leash. You know, we will be utilizing the real estate in dog runs to be able to kind of put some reminders of, you know, what's permitted and what's not permitted. It'll be for our public security agents as well. And now with our new operations chief and public security chief Anthony Tsakon, who's been with the city for over 19 years, he's very much boots on the ground, and he has a very good plan on how to enforce the bylaw and having agents assigned on specific days, specific shifts to almost tunnel vision dog bylaws. So to actually, short of having a task force like the city of Montreal does, we'll actually pay a lot more attention moving forward to, regardless of this bylaw amendment, we've got plans to start enforcing a bit more. And I'm saying this, and last Friday, I myself, Yitzhak Rabin Park, right next to Beth Zion Synagogue, Guelph in Westminster, or Kildare in Westminster. There was a playground there. There's a sign on the playground, dogs not allowed. It's a playground. It's, forget about the 30 feet from a playground there. The dogs is inside the playground off leash. People, please throw me a bone here. Help me out.
What is the fine for that, Jean-Marc?
Yeah.
How much is the fine, Jean-Marc? How much is the fine for that, for someone off leash, dog in the park?
Dog off leash starts at $250. And
Yeah.
if this is the first offense, it's $250. If the dog doesn't have a tag, then we can start adding, because obviously now that we have the dog, chances are you get a ticket and probably 1, 2, or 3 different fines, warnings. It depends. We're not in the mindset to start issuing 3 or 4 tickets. The goal is obviously make it safe. There was nobody in the playground. Was there any danger? No. Was the dog cute and fuzzly? Yes, it was. Probably would have, you know, followed me home. The goal is, I don't know how that dog reacts in the presence of other people, other dogs, and it's a law. So you know what?
Rules are rules.
Exactly.
Rules are rules. Jean-Marc, I'm going to ask you maybe to make some more remarks, but I think there's going to be a lot of questions. Thank you for an excellent presentation. I want to thank you for all the work you've done on this dossier, coming with us, with Jonathan and Anna Maria, who's not with us. So I'm going to do a few things. First of all, Jonathan Goldman has been the co-chair of the Dog Owners Committee and very involved with Anna Maria Katz, you know, running, you know, kind of overseeing and being my eyes and ears of the dog run. So I'm going to ask Jonathan to, you know, make his comments, ask his comments first. I know Carol had a question, Carol Rabinovich. We'll put her on shortly. Someone asked a question in the chat, and Tamar Hertz wanted to say something. So we'll start off. Jonathan, the floor is yours. Go ahead first.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So hi, everyone. I took a few notes, and I know these issues like were brought up, and I also know that like me and Anna aren't always in agreement, but I find a lot of these things are common sense related, let's be honest, which is why I have a few small concerns in trining them into law. It's like the food one sounds extreme. I know that Anna goes nuts. People get, you know, try to give snacks to their dogs, and that where I see more of an issue is people eating people food in the dog park. So that I understand, and I believe we put on the sign even in the rules that it says no. But as far as like dog treats, I do think they shouldn't be. But I also think it's a bit extreme to fine someone if they're carrying 2 cookies in their pocket. And some people, to recall their dog, they need a treat. You know what I mean? Especially young, untrained dogs. And the dog park is really a place for training. It's the place to do that kind of stuff, you know? So like I said, I don't disagree with the principle. I disagree with enshrining it in law and then saying, I'm going to call security and they're going to fine you because you're stuffing dogs full of cookies. And we did have some issues. There's exceptions. I'll be honest. Anna has one thing, but it's really been exceptions. There's 2 or 3 people which are not okay, from my experience. One used to throw cookies into the park like they were grenades. And then I told her, and she doesn't do it anymore. She thought she's being nice. I said, the dogs are going to tear each other apart. She'd sit on the opposite side of the fence outside of the park and whip them in, you know, because she was scared to hand the dogs a cookie. And then I had a few other people who sit at their chair and whatever, you know, they give their dog, then they give the friend's dog. So those are issues, no doubt about it. But I would say the rest of the people only use them in a situation where it's required. Now, even with the enforceability, let's be honest, I give a dog treats. By the time the security guard I'm using me as an example, I don't actually do this, but by the time someone calls security and they show up, it's a dead issue. What are you going to be? That guy gave treats to a dog. We took a picture, a photograph, you know what I mean? It's, I think, more of just a way to keep order. Like I said, common sense prevails usually. As far as that goes. So like, again, in principle, I agree, but in reality, administering it and so forth is not an issue. Everything else, is like more or less logical. You guys are like enforcing. Here, I know Besign Park. I don't have an issue with that, with anything you said, except they shouldn't let the dog off. I know why people do it. It's an enclosed space with a giant blue fence. So they're like, dog run. I can let my dog loose here without any worries. You know what I mean? And like you said, a lot of people will wait until the park playground is clear, but they don't pick up the poo if a dog poops in that sandbox, and they don't understand that it's not an enclosed space for that. So they get, you know, and I know your guys aren't going to just hand out fines. Your guys are usually okay. They don't come and hand out fines willy-nilly. They usually, you got to be a bit of a 1 or 2 offense person before they start, you know what I mean? I've been caught without a license because I was late a month or 2, or I got a dog late. And I have a dog now. I have him for 1 week. I have a new dog. I just got him. And I don't have a license yet, obviously, and I'm head of the thing. So I'm going to get one. If the guy pulls me over, I'm going to tell him, look, this dog is 9 months old. I got him 5 days ago. Your guys are okay. They're not looking to give out fines. What they're looking to do, like I said, is to create common sense order. You know what I mean?
Do you have a question that you want Jean-Marc to answer, and we can get back to as well, because we're getting a lot of questions in the chat as well. So I want to get to as many people.
The only one I had was that. The other thing I had was he mentioned something about balls and sticks in the dog park. Again, it's like a common sense thing. I don't have an issue. I think people should be able to exercise in the dog park. It's an area where me and Anna might disagree, and she gets very concerned with ball.
These are
where the dog is
questions.
Like controlling of the ball. I agree. Again, common sense. You know your dog has a problem with balls, put the balls away. You know
As I
mean?
mentioned in the proposal, sorry, Jonathan, in the proposal, it really is, you know, making sure there are no other dogs. If you're alone with your dog, and I have to say, finally happy, you know, they cut the hedges.
I've been asking for over a year.
Yes, and so, you know, we've got
it was a wall, you saw.
So we're very
Me
happy.
Too, I'm happy. I'm ecstatic.
Be able to see well inside. But again, as you mentioned, common sense prevails. This dog run on Mackle, for example, has sections. You know, when are we? The reason why we're proposing this is because there have been incidences, not necessarily in Côte Saint-Luc, but all the other public security departments. We talk. We have another meeting this week. I just got off the phone with Montreal just before coming online. So we talk and we trade notes and we discuss some of the incidences. And I speak of experience, and my dogs are well behaved. But if I've got a treat, and actually this dog biting incident that I have that came on me, it was just saying, please, you want to give a treat to my dog? He's super friendly. The man got bit. He had to get stitches. So guess what? It gets reported. Does it mean that we're going to deem it 9 on 10? No, of course not. But it's still an incident that needs to be addressed. So again, you know that we do have the power of enforcement. We have discretionary powers. Like as you've mentioned, I'm hoping to pass on the knowledge and the wisdom to my guys to sort of look, hey, get your story straight. It's not because there was a bite that you need to necessarily, right? Dogs play fights. They tend to gnaw at each other. I know this, and I've studied dog behaviorism, although I'm no vet and I'm no specialist. But even I'm just using my common experience. I see my dogs play, and sometimes, yeah, they gnaw at each other. And every now and then I hear a little scream and go, whoop, whoop, that must have hurt. So timeouts.
Look, even that, a lot of times even Anna used to pressure me, make this dog dangerous or that dog dangerous. I said, you understand what you're asking? You're asking someone to vouch that the dog is actually dangerous. He's going to be assessed. And then they may take this dog away from the owner, or they may put the dog down. So before you enter that route, be very, very careful. Even if you're mad, even if the dog did bite someone, I go, remember the path you're going down. Maybe it was an exception, maybe it was an incident. So yes, a bite does not necessarily mean a dog is dangerous, just so everyone here is on board. If a dog bites you, it doesn't necessarily mean he's dangerous or aggressive. Dogs bite for a number of reasons. Sometimes it's dog aggression, sometimes it's people aggression, sometimes it's food, sometimes it's pain, sometimes it's a million things. And you have to be very careful. And like he said, dogs play, things can get out of hand. I have an unfixed male now. I know that I have to keep him away from certain dogs sometimes until he's fixed. This is the way it is. You have to be a responsible owner and really keep an eye on your dog. So, you know what I mean? Most dogs, there are dogs that are aggressive. I would say most dogs are not aggressive by nature, but it's the job of the owner to watch the signs from the dog and from the other dog. Again, common sense, which people don't have. People like to have, and this is in the dog park, and this is also out of the dog park, a set it and forget it attitude, I've noticed. And that's the same with the example he said in the backyard. It's the exact same thing. I have a dog. My previous dog, he used to be in the backyard a lot. I secured my gates. I secured my fences. I secured my wood. That dog should not be able to escape easily. And like he said, with my dog I have now, I sit outside with him. And with the other one that would spend like 6-7 hours outside at a time because he wanted to, I would have to go out there every 10 minutes and check what's going on, because like it's like a kid. Like, you can't leave him on his own, and they're smart. Some will dig underneath, dig over, rip apart. I had a dog a few years ago that learned to open the gate on her own. She knew that it's a snap lock.
Okay, sorry, I had to mute Jonathan because he's making very good points, but I want to get to a lot of other people. And Jonathan, I want everyone to know how much work Jonathan and Anna have done to chair the Dog Owners Committee. I really appreciate it. Before I get to Tamar, because I want to give her a chance, there's a question in the chat, Jean-Marc, from Luce in French. I'd like to know if you could read it and answer en français, s'il vous plaît.
Bien sûr, bien sûr. Madame Luce.
La propriété au parc à chiens, do you see it? 8:25 p.m.
Yep. La propriété au parc aux chiens. Depuis le printemps dernier, il y a plus de pelles au parc à chiens. Le Government Rook, on me rend aux travaux publics à la ville que c'est l'affaire des propriétaires de chiens. N'y a-t-il pas une solution? Oui, absolument. Madame Luce, je suis d'accord avec vous. On fournit un espace. C'est regrettable quand on doit remplacer, parce qu'évidemment, une pelle, on s'entend. Ça ne coûtera pas des centaines de milliers de dollars garder une pelle là, mais on s'attend en tant que propriétaire. Encore là, je ne me promène pas avec ma pelle. Si on établit un espace clos pour permettre aux chiens de jouer, de courir, de s'amuser, de prendre l'air, ils vont faire leurs besoins. Les sacs, des fois, ça m'arrive. Combien de personnes ici ont déjà eu justement la fameuse petite boule avec les sacs, puis c'était le dernier sac où j'ai oublié de remettre le refill de sac, puis là, on se retrouve. Une pelle va régler évidemment ce problème-là minimalement.
C'est qu'on apporte nos sacs, mais c'est que tous ne font pas et tous ne sont pas propres. Et ce qui arrive, c'est que ça m'arrive souvent d'arriver le matin, puis le terrain n'est pas propre. Donc, est-ce que je dois prendre mes sacs à moi pour... Donc, c'est juste que ça manque de...
Une des choses que je voulais proposer, puis je le dis en français en premier lieu, là où je demeure dans les Laurentides, le long de certaines pistes cyclables parce qu'on n'a pas de parc à chiens. Nous, Côte Saint-Luc en a 2, mais nous autres, on n'en a même pas un à Sainte-Thérèse. Juste vous dire ça, comment vous êtes chanceux. Mais le long des pistes cyclables, il y a des distributrices de sacs à poupou que j'appelle. Ils sont faites vraiment pour ça. Et juste à côté, la poubelle pour disposer. J'ai fait comme, oh, quelle merveilleuse idée de pouvoir avoir une ressource de plus, ne serait-ce que des fois juste.
C'est juste que quand il y a une pelle puis que c'est l'autre qui l'a laissé, ben c'est plus pratique de prendre la pelle que.
Oui, mais
So
c'est
look,
une simple requête aux travaux publics.
I
Puis
bought about 8 shovels for the park on Mackle. I have not had a chance to buy shovels yet for the park but like he said, Public Works should really be replacing that stuff, but I've done it out of pocket for the last 3 years now. I've been replacing the shovels here one at a time.
Fun, Jonathan. So let's discuss up air that we can maybe invest in some more. But I'll ask Jonathan and Anna to make some inspections on that dog run. It's right near your office, Jean-Marc. Merci beaucoup, Luz. J'apprécie ça. Merci beaucoup. Okay, I'm going to ask Jonathan, mute yourself, please. I'm going to ask Tamar Hertz. I know she has some things to say. It was a while ago when we had the meeting, but Tamar, please go ahead. Tamar, for everyone who may not know, runs the Côte Saint-Luc Families Facebook page, among other things, which is one of our most important media in the community next to the Suburban. Go ahead, Tamar.
Thank you. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to share my non-dog owner opinions. When we worked on the last bylaw, when we were allowing dogs to go into the park, I mean, first and foremost, we were concerned about dogs near playgrounds, and it was like, besides safety, it's really the hygiene issue, like Jonathan mentioned. So even if there's no one there, we don't want dogs in there, going to the bathroom. And secondly, the wording, I think I had worked with the previous Public Works director, his name escapes me, but he was working on the wording for it to say that dogs are allowed in the parks and green spaces, except when a sign prohibits them. Because that means that if there's another small green space that has to be managed, like these are the exceptions of the exception, like a green space in a small cul-de-sac or something where children play, where there is a no dog sign, that those no dog signs remain. So if you could just make sure that the wording remains in the new version. So dogs are allowed, except where a sign prohibits them.
And what determines that they're allowed or not is 30 feet from a playground or a splash pad. So certain areas, certain parks, or even green spaces. Not all green spaces are parks or not dubbed as parks. So that's actually a good consideration that we don't necessarily need to identify. And one comes to mind, which is North Hampstead, the Tommy Douglas area, Bernard Mergler. There's a beautiful big green space there. It's not a park, doesn't carry a name. But there are picnic tables there, and it's in the middle of the road. It's next to Rollback Park, but it's the center of that square.
It's not a park. It's not every. I mean, the goal is not to ban dogs from every green space, but there are some green spaces where they're just small or kids use them a lot, and we just don't need people bringing their dogs to go to the bathroom there because if they're not close to the dog runs.
Of course.
Those are my only 2 comments. But thanks for including me.
Thank you, Tamar.
Thank you, Tamar. Carol Rabinovich, I noticed your hand up at the beginning. Your son is a great dog walker, and he can always be found with his phone in one hand and the leash in another. He's always on the phone because he's a busy guy. Carol, you have a comment you wanted to make?
Yes, you're absolutely right. But my granddog, his dog, is with us during the week so that he shouldn't be alone when everybody's at school or work. So I'm the dog walker. My comment is there are many dog owners in Côte Saint-Luc. There's a small percentage of us on this Zoom call. How are these dog owners going to know about these new bylaws?
First off, we've recorded this, so we're going to have this posted, but we're working on a database of all the dog owners that we have licenses for, because we can only account for the people who've gotten license for their dogs. And we have, I don't know, between 700 and 800 dog licenses. Not everybody has a license, but we certainly do spot checks sometimes, and we've got to do more of that. And we've got to do more of a sensitization campaign to get more people to get dog licenses. So we are going to get this video out. Now, I just want you to know that normally when we pass a bylaw in Côte Saint-Luc, we pass a bylaw. And sometimes there's a small consultation. But because we worked so hard on this, I asked Jean-Marc if we could have this information meeting. And while we have over 40 people on the call, once we post it on Côte Saint-Luc, the TNR, the dog, Côte Saint-Luc Central Bark, Côte Saint-Luc families, and we put it on our website and on my blog and so on and so forth, we're going to have hundreds of people, maybe more, watching this. So that's the answer. We're going to get a lot of information out. We'll do a summary on it. So, you know, this is just the beginning. By recording this meeting, Jean-Marc doesn't have to repeat himself. It'll be very valuable. So thank you, Carol.
When will these bylaws be passed? Like when are they being enforced?
We're hoping that this will be done by the end of the year. At least brought to council. That's the goal.
And
we'll
keep in mind, and not just for dogs, but when new bylaws come in, even the public security agents tend to have a grace period or a period, well, we're going to maybe issue more warnings than actual fines. Again, I will speak on behalf of public security. We actually also respond to the way we are responded to. So if we're met with aggression, oftentimes we will stop talking and that warning will become a fine. So by all means, we're all human. We approach you. I know I can speak on behalf of my agents that with respect, with politeness. If they don't, you let me know. That becomes my issue. But you know, we tend to have a job to do, and making sure, as I mentioned before, the goal is not to issue tickets. The goal is to remove the nuisance. I have plans on using the real estate of the dog runs, using the fences that we have as, you know, we could have not billboards, but, you know, some type of you know, how would you call it, Michael? Messaging there on the fences. And so it could be seasonal. Hey, it's dog renewal, dog tag renewal season. Hey, leashes extended over 6 feet are illegal, carries a hefty fine. You know, just make it more marketable, but make it out there so that, you know, people do get a good grasp of what they can and cannot do. A kind of did you know? And that's for us, the city, to maybe work with our communications department also and equip our public security agents with flyers of these, you know, regulations. And again, as Jonathan Goldman mentioned, we're just trying to go with common sense. We're not trying to get something, you know, so hard to enforce. It's so easy to make rules and bylaws. It's a different thing to enforce them. Most of these are really readily enforceable just on site. Walking X amount of dogs or being on a bike and walking a dog at the same time. To me, it's cruel.
I feel so bad for the little dogs having to keep up with the bike.
And it's a safety issue as well for whoever's riding that bike. If they slip and fall, then that becomes an EMS call, and we're still going. So yeah, I see your point.
So by the way, if anyone here who's watching this recording either live or when we put it on YouTube, please go follow both Côte Saint-Luc families and the CSL Central Bark, which is our dog owners page. There's a lot of very valuable information on our dog owners page. So please go on there. I'm going to go to some of the questions from the chat, Jean-Marc. Michael Satcher wanted to know, what's the cost of the permit required to walk more than 2 dogs at a time?
Well, that will be determined by council. But if I give you an example, the city of Montreal, for example, a dog walker permit is $107 a year. So I'll round it out to $100, for example. But this is going to be determined at a later time through tariffs. So this will be done through council. I'm more about the providing the facts so that council can make a proper assumption of what the cost
I'm
should
of
be.
the opinion that if someone's making a living or earning money by walking, $107 is way too low. And I don't want the average person just going out and getting a permit saying, oh, I could walk 3 dogs, I'll pay $107. So I think when we get to that discussion, we'll be talking about a higher amount. Okay, thank you. Fred Zwolski wanted to know, did you say that there are no balls allowed in the park? In the dog park?
Proposal is balls, sticks, or object to exercise a dog when another keeper's dog is also present. So if there's more than one dog, no, because this is, again, much like the food issue, a source of conflict and attack. Not all dogs play well with others. It's unfortunate. And obviously, incidences aren't, we come across some incidences of dog on dog. We've seen those occur even in dog runs. So we're just trying to make sure that if you're bringing your dog there, that your dog does not risk being bitten by another dog who simply is running after or gets injured just because he's running into another dog. I know they're resilient and all, but if I base myself even on my own dogs, they like to play. They don't play well together.
Yeah, Jonathan, I think, went to walk his new dog. Oh, there he's coming back, Jonathan. He looks like he's walking into like some like one of those time
You're
travel
close.
shows.
I went to feed him.
Looks like he just came out of, just like you walked out of a portal, Jonathan. Jonathan, are there issues with people with balls in the dog run? Is it a thing? Do you believe that dog balls should be abolished?
No, I don't think dog balls should be abolished. It is a thing. Like I said, there's a thing called dog possession. So some dogs, they don't, they get possessive of a ball and then they'll protect it against other dogs. But it's an exception. There's very few dogs that have it. And when they do, the common sense thing is that we usually tell the people nicely to put away the ball or go on the other side. Like he said, there's two sides.
Because that's what I thought. I mean, I go to the dog run myself often. I talk to dog owners. A lot of times it's 1 or 2 at a time. And the dogs love the fact that they can go running for their ball because they can't do that on their lawn and their lawn. So Jean-Marc, is that something, and I think a few other people mentioned it in the chat, is that something that we might, like Jonathan Goldman, would you recommend that we not put that in the bylaw, that we let the people in the dog run control that themselves and not make it a law about no dog balls?
I think so as well. I think we can modify the rules there that we have hanging up if you want, and we should make a duplicate of those rules and actually put them in the park, not just at the entranceway, because I find people don't seem to.
Okay, so I think what we can do, Jean-Marc, is some of these things we can make a rule as opposed to a bylaw, so that we can ask people as a courtesy, because most people are courteous when you ask them to do something. Because when I go in there, I kind of love seeing an owner throwing the ball to his dog, but I think,
and it's one of the few places they could do it, like you said.
Yeah, I agree. So okay, okay, thank you. I'll go to the next question. Jody Duskus lives near Wager High School. She sees people who cut through the walkway by Caldwell to Parkhaven with their dogs. It says no dogs allowed. Is it okay to use that walkway with her dogs when she's walking them?
The issue is that's not a city lot. That's private property. That belongs to EMSRB.
That belongs to my my school board. I'll have to ask the MSB about that. But yeah, I mean, there's no one really you can't really enforce it when it's on EMSB land, can you? And
we need to have someone actually place that complaint. So we need a representative of the school board to say.
I don't think that's going to happen, but I mean, I don't think that's going to happen. Jonathan's got his hand up. Very good, Jonathan. Now he's putting his hand up. He's getting much better. Go ahead, Jonathan.
So related to that, there is, and now that they cut the bushes, I can finally see across the street again. There is an occasional usage by some people of the Wager field, where they'll cut their dog loose, obviously there. Maybe their dog doesn't get along in the dog park, or they don't want to go in the dog park. There's numerous reasons. It's an awesome field for doing that, but I don't think it's allowed, and I don't know how you could regulate that. Like you said, it's private property in a way. It's sort of like but there is some, there
Jonathan,
has been.
let me tell you, we have about 80 schools, and
Yeah.
we have complaints from St. Leonard to NDG to Côte Saint-Luc, and it's very hard to control, and it's certainly very bad when someone lets their dog run. They don't pick up after them. Kids come to school, they're playing in the yard, but it's a problem we have to deal with at the school board. It's very difficult for the city to enforce. But Jean-Marc, if you see a dog running loose at Wager, can public security not do something about that? Can they all get out of their car and say that's not a dog run? Yes.
Absolutely. I gave the example. I did it myself. While at the synagogue last Friday, I crossed the park and met with these people. We have that duty, and we've issued fines a couple of weeks back. Ruth Colback Park, which is another beautiful big space that's just behind the community gardens, or behind Quartier Cavendish, off of Kellert. Beautiful park there, and not too many people there, but leave your dog off the leash, we will get you. And unfortunately, we also can capture your dog. And if we see fit, or if the dog's not identified, or you're nowhere to be found, we'll call animal control.
That's a dog off leash issue, which the municipality can intervene in. Exactly. So I'm glad you brought that point up, Jonathan, because it's not right. Someone's dog could be vicious. They could be running. Fred Zwolski just made a comment that treats should be allowed for many of the reasons given. Carol Blank says she stopped going to the park because of holes dug by dogs, not filled up, and no shovels. Her daughter spent a lot of time and money on physio. So that's a case. Jonathan, do you find that shovels are not in the dog parks enough? They keep disappearing?
Yeah, I don't understand it. Like I said, I've been replacing the shovels in the Mako one for the last 3 years. Sometimes I'll buy here just over the last 6 months. I bought 6 or 7 shovels, and even the Mako one, they're gone. I can't.
Okay, well, keep your receipts. Keep your receipts, and it's something we'll bring up, Jean-Marc and I, with Public Works. Okay.
It's weird. I do have one. Hold on. Now you brought up something important. I have one quick thing. This is like a question comment, but it's directly related here. As you know, we've had over the last few months, I would say, a lot vandalism at the park. They just now, it took me 4 or 5 months, finally, thank God, perfect timing, the Public Works replaced parts of the tent or all the tent. But there's some type of issue. I don't know if it's the same problem on Côte Saint-Luc Road, but I know that at Mako, I guess they're coming late in the evening, but maybe it's kids. I don't care so much if they're smoking drugs or whatever. That's your problem. What I do care about is the stupidity, like I said, of burning my tent, of stealing shovels. Some of them, I don't know what they do. They move the garbages around, like they roll them into odd places. I come in the morning, everything, you know, or they break chairs. I leave, there's 10 chairs. The next day, there's like 3 busted. There's no way that these 65, 70-year-old people are busting chairs. I had asked a while back your team, and maybe you could just remind them, maybe take a few, I'm not asking for like a guard or something, take a few passes there at night. Like you said, the bushes are finally cut. Now they can even look in without getting out of their truck. Maybe slow down at the gate, take a look in the park, see if anyone's sitting in the tent. I'm assuming this happens probably after 9 or 10 at night. For one, because there's dog people there usually in the summer at least till 9 at night, and in the spring and fall and winter till about 8 to 9 at night easily. Like the lights come on, and you know the nights are short, and people come. But still, somehow, some idiots are destroy. I don't know why they get off on it. They just make havoc there. I can't even explain it. They steal the bulls.
Jonathan,
who wants a dog bowl? I bought like 3 dog bowls.
Jonathan,
Yeah.
Point taken. Jonathan,
Okay.
Point taken. Noted. Thank you. Sarah wants to know, is it provincial law or municipal law to not walk more than 2 dogs at a time? And I know right now it's $107. How do you get a permit to walk more than 2 dogs? So that's the question, Jean-Marc.
So the number of dogs to be walked at once on public domain is not part of provincial. This was emanating mostly from Montreal. That's what they would have. That's what they have right now. They figure you've got 2 hands, you can hold 2 leashes. I know that the question of breed of dogs and the size of dogs come into play. I get that. But ultimately, it is right now, it is a proposed amendment to the bylaw. So ultimately, it will be for the dog owner to get a 1-year permit and to renew if they wish
That
to.
at City Hall, Jean-Marc, you get that at City Hall?
Until I have my wish that all permits, public security related, get into our brand new station eventually. Yes, through City Hall for now. We can work the logistics of what it will be, how much it will cost, and when they will be distributed. Because it also needs to be controlled. If we need to be
Yeah.
able to say Jonathan Goldman has a dog walker's permit that was purchased on September the 3rd, needs a reminder in 11 months to say you're due up. And we could even, like Montreal, they have late fees. So you can have additional fees if you go over that 12 months. Just saying, it's what other cities do. We
Well,
don't necessarily need to
Jean-Marc,
duplicate, but we can inspire ourselves.
when we met in the summer, we made it very clear. You could be on Robinson Avenue, corner of Côte Saint-Luc Road, and you're in Côte Saint-Luc, and across the street at the Esso, you're in Montreal. So the reality is that we have to be as close to Montreal as possible because we have a lot of connections there. I mean, if you look at a big part of Côte Saint-Luc. Jody Dusky says she has 2 dogs that are 10 years old and 2 years old. Since COVID, we have to renew the dog license online, which is great, but why do we always have to send the same information every year, like vaccinations, microchip? If you have a file on us, why send it all the time? Now, I think the answer to that question is we have to assure that there's been no changes, and so on and so forth. Is that the reason why we keep asking for the information, Jean-Marc?
Well, we crossed over to a new system. When we went to Emily, we needed all of that information. So the information that was gathered through City Hall and permits before Emily were basically drawn up on Excel, Google spreadsheets, and shared files. So oftentimes we didn't have access in a timely fashion. So obviously the initial registration of your dog requires to have the permits. But in terms of it's the rabies shots which expire, right? They're good for X amount of years. And so if your dog is involved in a biting incident, for example, that's the first thing that we're going to ask is show us the proof that your dog's vaccination papers are up to date, because we need to communicate to whoever your animal bit, whether be it a person or the dog's guardian, that, okay, yeah, rabies shot, that we're good, we're in the clear. But yeah, that is basically just to make sure that the dates that the documents now get carried over. We shouldn't have to. I mean, it's part of the bylaw to prove that the papers are in order. So depending on when the renewal is due, you may need to provide documents again.
Thank you, Jean-Marc. Very good question by Douglas K. And this is a common problem that we non-dog owners who are very upset about, and people, in general, people who don't pick up after their dogs, and many of us know the culprits. And how do we want to address this problem? Because he got shouted at with language not to be repeated on this forum when he politely offered someone a bag to put the poop in. So how do we deal with that? And how can we be more severe, Jean-Marc, on people who don't pick up after their dogs?
So obviously, and this goes for any sort of infraction, right? I wish I had a public security agent and a vehicle on every street. The reality of it is we don't. And we sometimes tend to other businesses as well, from running and fire calls to medical calls to security in municipal buildings. So when people say that public security don't issue tickets, that's not true. The reason is a lot of times public security will issue fines on infractions that they witnessed themselves, so that if the court case is appealed or the person decides to plead not guilty and go to court, we are the ones going to court saying, j'ai vu de mes yeux vu, like I witnessed this infraction myself. If we do not witness the infraction, we do have a protocol, a procedure where we will go, if you're placing a call and saying, my next door neighbor keeps, not picking up after his dog, you can actually, we will take a written deposition, we will identify you, and we can enforce. Ultimately, the first time is usually a warning or a fine. It depends really, as I mentioned before, discretionary powers. But we can take your written deposition and we can issue the fine even if we did not witness it. However, if the dog owner, the culprit, decides to plead not guilty in court, you may be called in as a witness to validate the information that you had. So we, when writing this déclaration du témoin, this witness deposition, we try to, not coach you, but tell you what we need in terms of information. I witnessed at approximately 8:55 on Tuesday, September 3rd, Mr. Mike Cohen walking his dog, and the dog defecated on my front lawn. He simply carried on. And so if this goes to court, these are the documents that are provided, and you may be called in to attest that you did indeed witness the infraction.
Jean-Marc, I'm going to try to wrap this up by 9 because Jean-Marc lives in Blainville and he stayed at the office tonight. I want to get him home before his wife locks him out of the house. And he's going to have to walk the dog, of course, when he gets home. So if someone has company, Carol Blank wants to know, that visits regularly, do they need a license for that visiting dog?
No. As long as the dog is registered in his permanent address, if they move into Côte Saint-Luc, you need a permit on day 31. So the first 30 days. So, for example, Jonathan that just got a dog, you're okay in the first 30 days. If you're dog sitting, as long as the dog is registered, say for example, we have snowbirds. Maybe those snowbirds are not bringing their dog with them in Florida. How cruel. But even as such, if the dog is registered, say in Westmount, has its tags in Westmount, as long as the tags are valid, we have means in public security to identify the dogs. If it means calling Director McBain and saying, I have dog tag 123, can you tell me who the owner is, or can you give me the vitals? We will exchange information.
Thank you. JS wants to know, we're allowed to have 4 dogs, so he wants to know, why can't we walk 3 at a time? Or do you need a dog owner's permit in order to walk 3 at a time?
Much like the example I gave myself, I'm in that situation. If you're walking one person, you've got 2 hands, you hold 1 leash per hand. If you have 3 dogs, and I know it's a combination, maybe the size of the dog, maybe the dog is a teacup, I get it. But we have to draw the line, and we're drawing the line at 2 dogs per person on public domain. Walk with someone that's capable of holding the leash and being in control of the leash. So obviously a 4-year-old may not be in control of a leash of a dog that weighs 75 pounds. But walk with the missus, or do like I do, 2 walks. I've slimmed down a bit this summer.
Okay, thank you. A question we've been asked before, it's been a few years now, why we didn't renew our contract with the SPCA?
Well, not necessarily my decision. I can just tell you that the service that we're getting through our current animal control provider is excellent, and the city is getting its money's worth. More so now that I would say in comparison to SPCA. I'll just take one topic. One example is they have patrollers as well, SPCA, and so does animal control. When we call, that's because we need them to come in, whether be it to, pick up a stray or just grab or bring a dog back to their shelter to identify or to hold a dog. If, for example, the dog owner hasn't been found yet, we weren't getting that service. We were waiting several hours and sometimes half days, maybe a full day before someone from the SPCA could come. That's just one of the examples, but I have to say that I sign off on those monthly invoices, and feel very comfortable about the service that we're paying right now through our current provider.
You someone makes the point, Natalie, and we'll keep this in mind, that not everyone, you know, some people walk dogs as a favor because some people can't handle it. But I have a feeling that if someone is not capable of walking their dog, they shouldn't have 3 dogs in the house. So, I mean, you know, you got to look at the big picture. I'll answer it there. Jonathan had a question from Anna about related to the maximum allowable dogs a dog walker can bring to the dog park. Now, isn't that the same thing, Jean-Marc, as walking? The maximum
One adult,
you could
one
walk
adult, 2 dogs.
Yeah, 1 adult, 2 dogs.
Okay.
And
Because
I mean, you know,
you
Jonathan,
have to step out of the car, right? You
No,
have to take...
I'll tell you why. For me, it's not a big problem as long as the guy's the responsible. But I did. Anna came to me about a week or 2 ago and said some guy pulled up in a tiny car, pulled out like 6 dogs, you know, and he didn't necessarily have good control over all of them. Most of the walkers, like I'll say, will come with 4 or 5 dogs, and most of them, they're good. They pick up the poop. They take it seriously, like a profession. So they're like, I'm gonna watch these 5 dogs. I'm gonna pick up their poop. But she is right. Like sometimes you get people where it's like beyond, like it's one guy, but he has 5 or 6 dogs, and it becomes a thing. Now you're telling me it's a maximum of 2 dogs? Okay, then your guys will have to pass by in the afternoon and take a look. You know what I mean? There are
Jonathan,
some
I think it's more, there's a lot of bylaws we have in Côte Saint-Luc that people are going to be dealt with if they take advantage of the situation. I'm not telling someone to bring 3 dogs to the dog run, but if someone brings 3 poodles to the dog run and no one's complaining and no one's going to go jump all over them, but if someone brings 3 aggressive dogs there and they're causing chaos, we have the ability to go in and find them. So look, I'm going to stop this now at 9 o'clock so Jean-Marc can get home. It's been a 90-minute meeting. We've recorded this. Shirley just made a note that there's a tiny dog on her street that's constantly off leash and runs at my dog. Well, Shirley, please report that dog to public security because we can ticket them for that. So there's no excuse. I remember when I used to deliver the Montreal Star. I'm going to be 62 years old, so I can tell you how old I am. I delivered the Montreal Star, and I was terrified of a dog on Davies Avenue that was constantly off leash and was trying to bite me. And I was just terrified to do my route every day. And this was a long time ago. Lord, did I realize then if I looked into a crystal ball that there would be a Jean-Marc one day to rescue me from that terrible situation. So I want to thank everyone for joining. We will make sure this gets out. Thank you very much, Jean-Marc. Thank you very much, Jonathan. For your leadership. Thank you, Anna, in your absence. Thank you, Tamar, for being on our committee. We will continue to reconvene. Have a good night, everybody. And yeah, go ahead.
Mike,
Yes,
I tried to get in. I don't know. My phone was frozen. Sorry. I don't want to take longer. The point that there's one point I wanted to make to answer.
Is it Natalie? It's my Natalie, my friend Natalie. Yeah. I didn't realize. Are you a dog owner, Natalie?
Yeah, it's been a long time. Listen, the point was that the price of the permit to walk multiple dogs, we shouldn't increase it too much because some people are injured or temporarily cannot walk, dogs. So they use those services, but they don't really have the means to pay for that service. So if we make it too expensive and we have people are elderly that can't afford to pay walkers, so they will do it temporarily. It's not every dog walker that is a full-time business. Sometimes it's students, they do it a few times throughout the year. So if the permit is too expensive, we might reduce the number of people who can help people in our community walk those dogs. And this is an important point to consider.
Natalie, again, you always, since I've known Natalie, she always makes good points, and she makes a good point there. So thank you, Natalie.
Thank you. And another thing, we talked about what dogs do, but how do we protect our dog? And one thing important is that lately we have fox and coyotes in the neighborhood.
Yes.
And I'm scared walking my dog. I'm scared leaving my dog in my garden, even though it's totally fenced. I learned that they can jump up to 6 feet into the garden. So it is a major concern. We called public security and they said they can't really do anything.
Yes.
It's not but the number of times that it's increased, that we see this lately is like,
Yeah.
even for kids, you know, you can have young kids in the backyard
Yeah.
too.
We
Or
had a
Natalie-
fox. We had a fox in our complex as well, and I saw it right in front of me kill a groundhog. It was very frightening. So you know what? On that note, Jean-Marc, I'm going to let you answer Natalie's question about
Yes.
foxes and coyotes, and then we'll wrap up. Go ahead.
Sorry.
So yes, so to merci Nathalie pour ce point. The mention is for foxes, they're the city of Montreal, the Aglo. So the island of Montreal, or they actually have an entity that deals with this, and they recommend. And I'll get the procedure, I'll get the link, or if you want to, drop me a line at publicsecurity@côtesaintluc.org. I'll be able to get that and respond to you. But there's an actual hotline and an email address, or actually it's a website where you report sightings, because obviously certain wildlife also they track the movement, they track the migration. So although provincial law does not enable us to trap these animals, there are entities that do. La MAPAC, for example, do have patrollers. But on the island of Montreal, it is very much governed, but not governed by the city. So, yeah, dispatch was kind of right, but at the same time, there's more to it than that. So please don't hesitate. Reach out to publicsecurity@côtesaintluc.org, and I can provide you with additional details on should there be any sightings, how to report them, and what the actions are taken. But that's not at the city level.
Jean-Marc,
That's what the Aglo level.
actually, if you could provide that for writing it to me, we can let the community at large know about it and maybe make it available on our website, because I do get a lot of calls of very frightened people, and people living in my complex, my condo complex, were very freaked out when we saw the fox. The fox walked right by me, and it's frightening. I'm sorry. And coyotes have been spotted in the snow dump. So thank you, Natalie, for your comments, and good to see you again.
Thanks.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us. And everyone, please like CSL Central Bark. Good night, everybody.
Good
Good
night.
night, Michael.
Night.
Bye.
Good night.